I knew the moment Karen stood at the edge of my driveway, arms crossed like a traffic cop with authority issues, that my quiet suburban life was officially over. She wasn't yelling yet, but the smile on her face said she already believed she'd won. Behind her, my 6-foot wooden fence stood perfectly straight, freshly stained and apparently offensive to her sense of control. The HOA says this has to go, she announced, waving a folder like a weapon. What she didn't know, what no one in that neighborhood knew, was that this fence was only the beginning. I'd moved into the neighborhood for peace. Trees, birds, kids riding bikes, the usual suburban dream. The HOA rules were thick, boring, and mostly ignored until Karen arrived. She wasn't an official board member, but she acted like one, patrolling sidewalks, counting inches, measuring grass. My fence became her personal crusade. According to her, it was illegal, non-compliant, and an eyesore. According to the actual HOA documents, it was complicated. For weeks, I fought politely. Emails, phone calls, printed diagrams. Karen escalated. She reported me daily. She filmed my yard from the sidewalk. She told neighbors I was destroying property values. Eventually, a formal notice arrived. The fence had to be reduced to 2 feet. 2 feet. At that height, it wasn't a fence. It was decorative disappointment. The day I removed it, Karen watched from across the street, arms folded tighter than before. She smiled when the panels came down, like a referee calling the final whistle. "See," she said loudly, making sure others heard. "Rules matter." And for a moment, I let her have it. I nodded. I thanked her. I even apologized. That was mistake number 1 on her part, because while Karen thought the battle was over, I was already planning something different, something natural, something slow, something that didn't violate a single rule. The HOA controlled fences, structures, and installations. But landscaping? Landscaping was a gray area, and gray areas are where patience beats power. I planted the first hedge the very next morning. I chose a species that grew fast, dense, and tall but required no permits. I read bylaws at night, highlighting loopholes, smiling at phrases like, naturally occurring vegetation. Karen drove by twice that afternoon, slowing her car, checking for violations, already celebrating. Neighbors whispered, assuming I'd surrendered. What they didn't see were the stakes, the soil amendments, and the quiet certainty that time was on my side. Not hers and never would be again. The hedge wasn't revenge. It was patience made visible, and it would rise inch by inch, season by season, until the truth became impossible for Karen, the HOA, and the entire street to ignore. That was the moment everything truly began there. Karen noticed the hedge before anyone else did. She always did. 3 weeks after planting, the thin green line along my property had doubled in height, still modest, still harmless but alive. I was watering it early one morning when her SUV slowed beside the curb. She didn't get out. She didn't need to. Her stare said enough. The same stare she used when she'd first spotted my fence. The stare that searched for control, for leverage, for something to report. At first, she tried to laugh it off. I overheard her telling a neighbor, "Plants don't count. They'll never block anything." She said it with confidence, but also with urgency, as if she needed others to believe it too. The hedge kept growing anyway. Every week it filled in more, leaves thickening, branches knitting together into something solid. Not a fence, something better. By midsummer, it was shoulder height. People walking their dogs slowed down to look. Some nodded approvingly. One neighbor asked what kind of hedge it was. I told him. He smiled and said, "Smart." Karen didn't smile anymore. She started taking photos again, crouching, zooming, pointing at nothing. One afternoon, I found a note taped to my mailbox. No name, just a printed line. Vegetation cannot be used as a barrier. That line did not exist anywhere in the HOA rules. I checked, twice. When Karen finally confronted me, it wasn't on the sidewalk. It was at an HOA meeting. She stood up, voice tight, holding pictures like evidence in a courtroom drama. "He replaced the fence with a hedge to block views," she said, pointing directly at me. "It's the same thing." The room went quiet. The board members looked confused. One of them asked, "Is it artificial?" Karen shook her head. "Is it planted within his property?" Another nod. "Does it exceed landscaping guidelines?" Silence. The HOA president flipped through papers, then cleared his throat. "There's no rule against hedges," he said slowly. Karen's face changed. Not anger yet, disbelief, like someone had moved the finish line, while she was already celebrating. After that meeting, things escalated. Karen measured the hedge weekly. She emailed the board with subject lines in all caps. She claimed the hedge was a living fence, a phrase she invented and repeated like law. Meanwhile, the hedge thrived. Sun, water, patience. By fall, it reached 7 feet, taller than the original fence, denser too, From the street, you couldn't see my yard at all. That's when Karen stopped smiling completely. She started losing sleep. Neighbors told me she complained constantly, saying I'd cheated, but I hadn't cheated. I'd followed every rule. I'd removed the fence. I'd planted landscaping, the same landscaping the HOA encouraged in its newsletters. Karen thought power came from enforcement. She didn't understand growth. Growth doesn't ask permission. It just keeps going, quietly, until one day everyone realizes it's too big to stop. And Karen was just beginning to realize that she wasn't in control anymore. By winter, the hedge had become a presence. Not just tall, but commanding. Snow dusted its upper branches while the lower leaves stayed thick and green, like it was daring the cold to try harder. From inside my house, the street noise faded. From outside, my yard had vanished behind living walls. And Karen hated it more than she ever hated the fence. She changed tactics. Instead of complaining about height, she complained about safety. What if someone hides behind it? She asked neighbors. Then visibility. Drivers can't see properly. Then property values. This looks unkempt. Each argument contradicted the last, but she didn't care. Control slipping makes people desperate. Desperation makes them loud. One afternoon, I came home to find Karen standing inches from the hedge. Ruler in hand, phone recording. She didn't greet me. She didn't need to. "This is intentional obstruction," she said, voice shaking. I calmly asked her to step off my property. She claimed the sidewalk gave her rights. I pointed out the property line. She stepped back, furious, and muttered something about lawyers. That word hung in the air longer than it deserved. A week later, I received another HOA letter. This one was different. Polite, careful. It said the board had received multiple complaints but found no violations. No action required. I could almost hear Karen reading it, disbelief turning into rage. She had relied on authority for so long that the moment it stopped responding, she didn't know what to do. Spring arrived, and with it, growth that felt almost personal. New shoots reached upward aggressively. The hedge thickened until sunlight barely passed through. Birds nested inside. Neighbors complimented it openly now. One even said it was better than any fence. That comment made its way back to Karen. I know because she confronted him in the street, accusing him of encouraging rule-breaking. He laughed and walked away. The final showdown came during a neighborhood inspection walk. Karen followed the board members like a shadow, whispering, pointing, urging them to act. When they reached my house, she spoke first. "This is what I warned you about," she said. He replaced the fence with something worse. The president examined the hedge, nodded thoughtfully, and then said the words Karen wasn't ready for. "It's landscaping, and it's well maintained." That was it. No warnings, no deadlines, no compromise. Karen's shoulders sagged. Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time since I'd known her, she had nothing left to say. The hedge stood tall behind us, silent and unmoving. A reminder that patience beats force every time. As the group walked away, Karen lingered. She looked at the hedge, then at me. Not angry now. Something else. Realization. She hadn't lost because of a loophole. She'd lost because she'd underestimated time, growth, and someone willing to wait longer than her ego could last. By the time summer returned, the hedge had finished what it started. 10 feet tall, thick enough to stop sound, sight, and curiosity. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't flashy. It just existed, solid and undeniable. From the street, my house was now a mystery. From my yard, the world felt calm again. And Karen? Karen had changed. She stopped patrolling as often. The clipboard disappeared. The constant emails slowed to nothing. It was as if the hedge had done more than block views. It had blocked her sense of purpose. Control had been her fuel, and now there was nothing left to burn. Neighbors noticed it too. People relaxed. Kids played without being watched. The street felt lighter. One afternoon, months after the final HOA inspection, I saw Karen standing across the road, staring at the hedge. No phone, no ruler. Just her looking up. I almost felt bad. Almost. She eventually walked over, stopping at the edge of the sidewalk like the hedge might bite. "You know," she said quietly, "this wasn't what the neighborhood was supposed to look like." Her voice lacked its usual edge. I replied calmly, "It's exactly what the rules allow." She didn't argue. That was the strangest part. She nodded once and walked away. That was the last conversation we ever had. The hedge kept growing, but I trimmed it carefully, keeping it healthy and compliant. Birds returned every year. Shade cooled the yard. The neighbors who once stayed silent now waved, smiled, even joked about how nature won. The HOA updated nothing. They couldn't. The rules had been followed to the letter. Karen eventually moved. No announcement. No farewell. One day her house was simply listed. When the new owners arrived, they complimented the hedge on their first walk through the neighborhood. They said it made the street feel private, peaceful, established. I thanked them and smiled. Looking back, the fence was never the real issue. It was control. Karen thought power meant forcing others to bend. She thought winning meant watching someone comply. But real power is quieter. It waits, it grows. It doesn't shout at meetings or wave folders in the air. It reads carefully, acts patiently, and lets time do the heavy lifting. The hedge stands there still, taller than the fence ever was, taller than complaints, taller than authority misused, and definitely taller than one person's ego. Karen thought she won. She thought removal meant defeat. What she never understood was that some victories don't look like fights at all. They look like green leaves, slow growth, and the calm satisfaction of knowing you didn't break the rules. You simply outgrew the problem, and that's something no HOA can ever take away. If you loved watching Karen get outsmarted by the hedge, hit that subscribe button for more wild HOA battles, give this video a like, and drop a comment below telling us what you would do if Karen came to your yard.